Hi, I'm Mindy Stearns. Well, to know him is to love him. He's a CEO, father, entrepreneur, businessman, outlier, overcomer, and underdog. I'm talking about my husband, Glenn Stearns, and this is Grit Happens.
Never gets old. Never gets old.
It is. Just don't start asking me to do that at home, okay? I only do this in studio. It would cost you too much to do it at home, right?
Trust me.
So here we are. I'm really excited about our guest today. As a friend we've known for some time. We were introduced to him, I don't even know the year. It's been a few years.
Gosh, it's got to have been, 10 years or so?
Yeah.
It's been a while.
And what a life he has lived. Now, if you've been living on a rock, maybe you don't know who J.R. Martinez is, but we do, and we want to introduce you to this incredible human being. Now, let me just run a list of accolades before I show you this little video that kind of it's deep and broad and has some incredible photos of his life journey. For the TV watchers, you may have seen him on ABC Daytime, On My Children. He was the star, 2013 Mirrorball star, Dancing with the Stars. I mean, he's been on Oprah Winfrey Show, 60 Minutes, Ellen, The View, Tonight Show, Good Morning America, CBS Nightly News, CNN, Fox News, HLN, Univision. He narrated the CNN documentary in a series in America, Vets Wanted.
Look at him getting tight over there.
I'm so excited. He served as a guest. He was a guest on The View. He also had his own radio show, the J.R. Martinez Show. Now, we're not bringing him in.
I know. I'm watching him on the side screen over here, and he's like saying, stop.
He's like, no, stop. No, I just... What
You've done a lot, my friend.
He is an author of a best-selling book, full of heart, My Story of Survival, Strength, and Spirit, a memoir about his own personal tragedy. Such an incredible story. So I cannot wait for you to talk to this gentleman, or for us to learn more about him. But let's just show this little video.
You know what now? But I'll tell you one more thing that you didn't add in there is probably
the most important.
Is that of all that, right? It comes. How does all that success happen? A lot of times it happens through adversity, right? JR spent 36 months in the hospital after having been blown up, basically in Iraq. So we'll go through all that. He's a war
hero. To us, he is an American hero, a war hero who has made amazing sacrifices for our country, so that we can be also free and enjoy the entertainment of who he is and what he's brought to us and the inspiration. So let's watch the video before we bring him in studio. We all grow up with a goal for ourselves. We build a path to get there. And here we are seeing JR as a darling young man, just full of life, football, inspiration, family. But sometimes we can't take the most direct path to our dreams. Here he is being sworn in as a military, and sometimes the world gets in the way.
That's right.
An honorable soldier. And here we are seeing the aftermath of a terrible tragedy that occurred while serving in Iraq. But the smile still remains, and the inspiration still translates. And we see him on the screen in many various roles, inspiring and smiling. Dancing with the Stars. I mean, we are going to talk about that as a guest on The View. And continuing to give a smile and a hug and inspiration to everyone. This is a man who you want to know. A man who you want to dance with. A man you want to hug. A man you want protecting you. A man that you want at your side, in your corner, in your back, in your friendship circle. And a book that he wrote, a bestseller. You don't want to miss that. And let's not forget The Sexiest Man Alive on People magazine. There are a lot of accolades. How do you even imagine this man who has adapted and overcome? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Grit Happens our friend, Mr. J.R. Martinez.
Hey, J.R.
Sorry we muted you so you couldn't stop me.
He was going, stop. How you doing?
Are you there?
Oh, my God. I don't even know what to say. I haven't blushed like that in a very long time. Thank you both for such a generous introduction, Mindy. Thank you so much. And it's so good to see you guys. I know it's been a very long time since we have been able to see each other, but it's so good to see you guys in this form and to have the opportunity to talk about your podcast and grit and this thing
Grit.
that I think all of us are having to be exposed to at this very moment.
That's right. You know, you say at the end there of your video, it's adapt and overcome. And that's been one of probably the lessons that we've tried to push out here, which we basically called pivoting, right? I mean, it's like when you get to a place in your life that, it doesn't go exactly the way you planned it, you can't just sit and become a victim. You have to change your course. You have to figure out a way. And obviously, you've done an amazing job in doing that. And that's really, I mean, we want to kind of dive into what do you think the secret is, right? I mean, is it adversity? Did you have it in you before? Where would you have been if all of this adversity hadn't hit you, and was it a blessing in disguise? So, what do you think?
So for the people that are able to see me right now, you can see that my body has been burned over 30%. Obviously, you can see my face and my head. You can't see the rest of my body. I mean, you can, but it's not the right show for that. But
well, we could. There's a lot of things we do. We
Mindy
push
will
the
take
envelope.
But I actually say at this stage in my life that it's a blessing. And I can only say that because of the work that I've done. And when I don't mean that in a sense of entertainment related or speaking or writing the book, I'm talking about emotionally, mentally, the work that I have done to get to this place, to heal emotionally and mentally. And as in your previous, episode, you had Charlie Plum on, and he talked about being a POW. And for him, he stated so beautifully as well. Most of us have a tendency to think about physically the space that he was confined to for 6 years, but we're not thinking mentally and emotionally the space he was confined to. And that's relatable. All of us are in that space at some point or another in our lives, and especially now with everything taking place in our country and in the world. And I believe the secret is not to run away from the change, is not to run away from the obvious. It's to hunker down. It's to do the work. And I have had to do a lot of work and understand who I was as a person and what qualities I brought to the table that were not physical. Because most of my life prior to the moment that I was injured, I focused on appearance. It was all about looks. And the whole concept of having a personality, and that was foreign to me because no one ever comes up to you and says, you have an amazing personality.
That's not something you see right off the bat.
No, oh, God, you're beautiful. You're gorgeous. Oh my God, your features and all of these.
A lot of people ride on that. They ride on the strength of that.
And I was guilty. And I was guilty of the same thing. And so suddenly my world is turned upside down at the age of 19 years old. And I had to accept that the old JR was no longer here. No amount of surgery was going to recapture that individual. He was gone. And I had to grieve that loss because there is an element of grief.
Yeah.
And I grieved that loss, and it was challenging. And then I had to embrace this new opportunity to accept, oh, wait, okay, I can still tap into the things that I loved in the military, which is service. I can still do that, but in a different capacity. And that's what you're talking about, Glenn. It's
right.
That element of being able to pivot and still not staying true to who you are and what your values are and your beliefs are and your motivations, but maybe doing it in a very different form, which is why from a business element, people now go to social media. And there's a lot of people that said, I don't want to learn how to do social media. And they're like, well, okay, well, your business is not going to be as effective as it
adapt. That's right. So you're right. I mean, anger, denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance, right? I mean, you go through your stages and then you adapt and you accept and you realize that, to your point, life has changed and it's time to move on. And you have done that so well. And that's the biggest part of, I think, the message here and why we call it Grit Happens is life gets in the way. And then it's what do you do in order to realize that you need to move forward. And if you don't, you're just a victim. And if you're going to live in that world, it's okay. You can say that it's everybody else's fault, but you're not going to be a happy individual. You're not going to be somebody, and I don't care how you measure happiness. But it's, you need to be able to go to bed at night and put the head on the pillow and realize that you did the best you could do, and
Yeah.
not blame the world, or you're
Yeah.
just going to be a sad individual.
It's interesting. I have a friend that I was talking to recently, and she said that her grandmother told her that there are volunteers and victims. And, victims in her interpretation are people that, for example, like Charlie Plum, right? Like he was captured in that space. There was no way for him to actually escape. But for most of us, we're whatever adversity, well, we're volunteering to stay in that space. We
Ooh,
don't
that's
have
powerful.
to.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, her grandmother, through all the adversity she was going through, her grandmother said to her, "Don't be a volunteer to this pain and to this mindset." And I believe that every single one of us have internally this ability and the tools to survive, but to thrive is a very different thing.
Right.
Like most of us, we feel like we're doing just enough to survive, but then how are you going to thrive? And I can honestly say, and a lot of people, here we are on a Memorial Day was just a few days ago, and with a lot of people look at that day and they're trying to understand maybe what that day is. They thank me, they thank other service members for our service, and obviously the day is, as both of you know very well, it's the day to honor those that have made the ultimate sacrifices and the families that they left behind. But I think about that, and I'm so blessed that there was a team of individuals that saved my life. And I'm so blessed that I get a second chance at life to figure it out. I don't want to waste it.
Right.
I don't want those men and women and families and children that have lost someone because they've made that incredible sacrifice. I don't want them to look at me and just say, "Oh my God, like he just blew it. I wish so-and-so was here." I want them to look at me and say, he is an extension of the person that we lost.
Oh.
He is an extension of that individual. And when we see him thriving, it puts a smile on our face because it allows me to believe that that's what our loved one would have done, right? That's how our loved one would be living life. That's who they were before what happened to them. And, a lot of people in our country, because as you guys know as well, less than 1% have served in our military. A lot of people, when they say thank you, in many cases, do they really even understand what they're saying thank you for?
Right.
And when you start to explain to them the traumas and the challenges that so many of our service members face when they're making that transition back home, whether they have physical wounds or not, because there's a different wound that exists, and it's the mental wound, it's the emotional wound. Charlie Plum, again, referred to it as post-traumatic stress disorder. I want people to understand that what happened to me was challenging, but what it did is it triggered every other trauma that I was exposed to before that day that my life was changed in Iraq. And I think it's important to say that because I had experiences and trauma that I was exposed to prior to joining the military. And the military was a way for me to, in many ways, give back to the country. This was after 9/11, be able to travel, be able to see the world, get some discipline, and serve. But then you throw now this adversity on top of that already existing trauma. Well, now you're going to get this young man that is incredibly confused, who doesn't have the tools and the resources, and to some degree a support system. And doesn't mean that they didn't care. It just means that people didn't understand how to support me. And neither did I know how to convey what it was that I needed. And when I tell people that I'm blessed and lucky to be here today, the obvious is surviving Iraq. Yes, I'm blessed that I survived that. But I'm also referring to when I was 22 years old and I got out of the hospital after 34 months, and I was 23 years old, and I was 24 years old, and I was out in the world trying to find my space and my existence. I was a kid that was still grieving, and I was a kid that was using alcohol as a way to mask a lot of the pain and the emotions that I wanted to run away from. And it wasn't until my best friend one day in a very, I mean, intimate setting, just he and I, he said to me, we were out and I was just being just just an unpleasant person to be around. And he challenged me and he challenged me. He said, you need to cry. And I, what do you mean cry? I'm 24 years old. Like, you don't, what do you mean cry? I've never seen a man really cry. And and he told me that there was a lot of pain and scars that I needed to address. And my what separates, I believe, many of us is I was willing to listen. I was willing to listen, and then I was willing to actually take the advice and say, well, let me try to do something with that.
So,
And that changed my life.
you
That's
know,
a good friend. I mean, just who was that friend?
His name is Dan Vargas, and he is 20-year Air Force veteran. And he is, you know, I tell this story, and you know, I'm okay with sharing this. You know, it doesn't, you know, paint me in the best picture. You know, I was young and I didn't know what I was, but what I wanted, what I was doing. But this particular night, it was actually a fundraiser for a nonprofit that we worked for at the time, and it was we were at a fundraiser, and it was four of us in a car, and all of them veterans. And one of the guys said something, and I snapped back, and I just, you know, just everything just annoyed me because I wasn't happy with myself. And Dan, who was driving the car, tells me to chill out. I'm in the back of the car, and I snap at him, and I said, you don't talk to me like that. I don't know what I said. And needless to say, some words were exchanged, and I wanted to fight him. Now I'm 5'9", 185 pounds. He's 6'4", 275 pounds.
Taking it on.
And I was ready.
Right.
And and thank God he didn't act on that, because it'd be a different story today if he would have acted out on that. But instead, he could have easily said, okay, let's fight. No, instead he said, no, let's talk. And he created a safe space for me. And let me tell you how powerful that moment was. And which is why I believe that all of us, especially during these times, should be doing this for one another, creating a safe space for each other where there's no judgment and it's just pure unconditional love and support. So before that day, he would always end the conversation and say, I love you. And I would always just say, okay, I'll talk to you later. It just did. I'm not going to tell him I love him.
Wow.
Because my father left when I was 9 months old. I didn't have a man in my life that ever said, I love you, JR. That wasn't something I was comfortable with. Well, after that evening, the next day we're at the event, and I remember, we saw each other in the morning, and I hugged him and I said, I love you. And I was the one that initiated that. And it just goes to show that if you feel safe, if you feel like someone listens to you, and if there's no judgment, because I shared some stuff with him. I shared my thoughts and my feelings, and that's dark. And a lot of people would run away from that. Instead, he said, this is where the real work is done. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get into it. And I got to tell you, he's been there with me throughout the last 16 years since the moment we met.
That's great.
That's a good friend.
I would,
career, it's through my marriage, it's as a father, everything. He's always helped me understand how to pivot and how to approach whatever the scenario is.
our again, I think what a lot happens to us is we build these walls and we are afraid to become vulnerable. And when we allow others in, we begin to grow, and so whether we have gone through a lot of adversity or we haven't, we're all trying to protect this, our own hearts. Like, we don't want to be hurt, right?
Absolutely.
And so then what we end up doing is creating this space between us and other people to where we don't get to really be vulnerable, and then we don't let enough people in. We don't get to that love feeling, right? Which is the ultimate. And I know that I was blessed in a way by having cancer, right? Same thing. It's the ability to see that life is short. And the ultimate that came out of that for me was, that there's one real powerful emotion in the world. It's love, right? And so, my wife spent, so much time being a caretaker, and and you realize how fortunate you are. And so, for those out there, whether they've been through the adversity or they get to just be lucky enough to listen to other people who've been through it, letting people in and learning how, because, again, when we get to that final day, it's all about the growth, right? What are you going to think about? You obviously aren't going to think about how long you worked and all that stuff. You're going to think about the loved ones that you have. And that moment for me, and I'm sure you had a few of them, JR, but mine, when I found out that I had, a very high chance of not getting through it, all I thought about were my loved ones, right? And then I'm thinking, what am I going to do? If they're gone, this is, if I'm gone and I can't help raise these young children, and leave my wife, of course she'd find a nice younger pool boy or something, but she'd be okay.
The same intro that you got, so
But it's all about really, again, being vulnerable, letting other people into your life, and allowing people to see your faults. Okay, in your case, you get to see some of them right there, right? And they're not faults. What I mean is, you get to see your scars, literal scars, versus other people. To your point about, a lot of people, especially with PTSD and other things, have internal scars. You don't get to see those, right? And so it allows people to be able to embrace you if you let them. Or you get other people, because you made a choice, and that's what it is, to take that to your literal outside scars and say, hey, I'm okay with this. Matter of fact, I'm not going to be the victim. I will grow, and I will, take this. And then people can say, they can admire the fact that, because I think most people that push through pain, either physical or mental pain, you don't realize what they've overcome. And the ones that you do, take Muhammad Ali or a fighter, and you watch them in the ring, you admire them for, almost going down, yet they still stick it out, and so, and then you get this feeling of pride, I guess, that you didn't go down for the count, and it's so important, I think, because we also teach others, and we also have, a lot more self-growth through confidence. When we have that confidence, it allows other people to feel it, and other people want confidence, and so it allows them to kind of grow.
Well, I think the key is, like, I think it's Brene Brown that says, in vulnerability, you find community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true, but it's in our nature. It's not in our nature to adapt to change. It's in our nature to resist the change. And
we have to go against our nature to really overcome that, because that's
right. Yeah, like to actually, for all of us to sit here and accept what our vision was. Like, again, I keep referring back to the episode of Charlie Plum, but I mean, it was so powerful. But he talked about being in that confined space for 6 years. He was married before he left. And all he did was make up plans of what his life and his marriage was going to be like when he came home. And then, as you guys know, and as he said, 3 months before he came home, she filed for divorce. She moved on. She didn't know. And he all of that changed. And all of us have these plans and these goals we set out for ourselves at whatever stage in our lives. But when it doesn't go that, the way that we had planned and envisioned it, because of somebody else's path and their course, or what we see on television, or whatever we just make up in our head, then what do we do?
Right.
And that you have to accept, okay, I wasn't successful taking this path and this trajectory. Maybe I should. What's the lesson here? What and letting go of certain things, and then accepting that new opportunity to reinvent yourself. But it's, I recently, like everybody, I feel, watched that ESPN The Last Dance about the 1998 Chicago Bulls, and it turned into more about Michael Jordan. But the reason why he is arguably one of the greatest or if not the greatest to ever play the game of basketball. I mean, he was rejected, and he had all of this adversity up against it, but he always understood mentally I need to get in the right headspace.
Right.
And by doing that, the body follows. And for me, that is, I mean, I
It's
can
true.
tell you that
It's true.
when you said, Glenn, that I made that choice to not be this and to be something else, I want people to understand, because it's easy to look at Glenn and Mindy and JR and all the other guests that you've had on your podcast and say, well, look where they are. Yeah, it's great. It's easy. I want that life. But what a lot of people don't understand, because we're all so busy, we don't have time to really dive in to understand people's lives, is that the three of us have not made we didn't make just one choice and one decision in our lives. It's almost like that late night infomercial where, they're like, you show this product and you're like, oh, I really want that product, right?
We've got them all. Mindy took them and bought them at midnight, but by the way.
And yeah, and then you call or you go online to place the order and they'll tell you, yeah, it's $19.99, but 5 or 6 or 10 payments of $19.99. That's life. It's not one decision, one choice. You're going to consistently have to make choices and decisions, and you're going to be challenged. And so it's a matter of how true and what's your foundation like, where you're going to continue to be able to shut up and make those same decisions.
I like the analogy we're talking about. Grit happens, when an oyster forms a pearl after a piece of grit gets inside, and I think life is about creating a pearl out of the grit. You get these pearls of wisdom because you have had this grit and you've had to work it and deal with it, and it rubs up against you and it causes irritation, and eventually, if you can stay with the program and you can make the good choices, eventually that grit that you have had, that adversity, becomes these incredible pearls.
And I have I've tried to emphasize the fact that when we're in the middle of it, because there's a lot of people out there that are in the middle of it, especially in times that we've gone through recently, and they can't figure it out, that's the time you need to kind of sometimes have this out-of-body experience to say, I'll get through this. It's going to be okay. And this might even be the best part of the book, right? And so you got to kind of condition your mind to say that this is when I need to stand up and fight harder than I've ever fought, because a lot of us tuck our heads between our legs or stay in bed too long, right? That's when you need to show up and you need to get out there, because that is the defining moment of who you're going to be. And people don't, that's the time when a lot of people don't understand. They think, well, nobody knows what I'm going through right now, right? And you do know what you're going, that's the whole point of it, is everyone has their bottom, and you need to then say, I'm going to stand back up. And so, that's kind of what this whole thing has been about. I did the little TV show a while ago on Discovery, and it was about going with absolutely nothing and rebuilding my life with $100. And when I was in the middle of it, when I finally realized I'm probably going to fail and the whole world's going to see this, and I want to run and hide, and maybe if I leave now, they'll never make this television show and no one will know my failure. At that very moment that I realized this is my time to shine again, right? And it turned out great. I'm very proud of the outcome of, of the underdog barbecue. So it worked out well.
Yeah.
Have you had some underdog barbecue yet, JR?
I have not, but man, that sounds good.
Yeah,
We're
we
going to
gotta
have to
get it for
send
you.
you a little gift pack. We're going to send you a little gift pack.
That sounds
So,
amazing.
we want to be cognizant of your time, but we're going to wrap pretty soon. But I want to just, what are you doing now? I know you're so involved in so many in charity organizations, and what's keeping you busy now? I mean, we're all kind of locked up at home. What are you doing right now to keep yourself busy besides this incredible podcast? I mean, you've just reached the pinnacle of your career.
Yeah, yes.
Where do you go from here?
So, it's like all of us, we've had to pivot. And, prior to this COVID-19, I was on the road nonstop, doing a lot of speaking, motivational speaking at a variety of conferences and events, and then also doing a lot of charitable work. But then, of course, now with no large gatherings and being stuck at home, it took this opportunity to say, you know what, there's been something I've been really wanting to do for a very long time. And what it is, I've been wanting to start a podcast myself, and then also starting to create content for the YouTube channel, and just connect with people in a different way. I'm 36 years old, and
Just a baby.
I know I'm young, but I've been traveling for 16 years, and I'm at a point in my career where it's okay. I
Good to
want to
take a
pivot. I
breather.
want to do something different.
Kind
So
of nice to be
for
home with
me,
your wife and daughter and
your dog? Don't you have a dog?
Romeo.
I have 2 dogs, but it's
Oh,
known that for the listeners and the viewers right now who don't understand this backstory, I am forever indebted to Mindy and Glenn because they gave me my first child.
we're surrogate parents.
Let me clarify for people. I'm referring to a black lab. And
Aw.
it was 10 years ago
Wow.
that
Was
we
it?
first met in LA, and it was at a fundraiser for wounded troops. And I remember I was asked to help with the auction. And afterwards, well, you guys had like a mingling the night before the golf tournament and then the actual auction itself. And I show up and everybody's just mingling. And I was like, so what are the auction items? And they start listing. And they say a puppy. And I was like, a puppy? I was like, where's the puppy? And they say, well, it's here. And I was like, oh, okay, can I see the puppy? And he comes out, this little 8-week black lab. And I just like, I melted. And I went home. And I don't know if you guys ever knew this, but I went home and I started thinking, okay, so how much do I think I could bid? And I think I came up with like $1,000. I've never seen anyone like a puppy, which he was intended to be a service dog, that he was going to go get trained. That was the whole idea. And I didn't know. So I was like, $1,000. So I show up at the event the next day and we get to the puppy, and Glenn and Mindy, you guys stand up and you bid on him, and it passed $1,000.
Well fast.
You're like jerks.
Well, it wasn't meant to be. And then you start kind of justifying it. Well, I travel a lot. It's not the right time.
Aw.
And I never forget you, Mindy, you stood up and you raised your hand and you said, can I say a few words? And of course, you were like, yeah, of course. And so you come up on stage. And I remember I was grabbing like a quilt, which was the next auction item, I think. And I'm just, rubbing my face in it, crying. I lost him. And then the both of you so kindly said, we love this organization. We love this dog. We have dogs of our own, but we want to give it to JR. And I just remember I melted. And I have to tell you guys that, obviously you guys were aware of the connection I felt with him. He has been one of the most incredible and best blessings I ever could have asked for. He has been there with me through so much. And although he isn't necessarily certified as a service dog, he is like my service dog. He is my emotional support. He is, when our daughter was born, she grew up understanding that she was the second child. And to validate that, I remember taking her to the dentist when she was like 4 years old, and the dentist, small talk to get her comfortable, asked, well, do you have any brothers and sisters? She said, I have a brother. And I'm in the back like, oh no. And then, well, is he older, younger? He's older. Is he nice to you? Oh, he's very nice. Oh, well, do you guys play? What does he like to do? Oh, he loves to play catch. He's always playing catch, but we don't give him a lot of water. We can't give him a lot of water because he throws up. And he just turns around and looks at me like, what is going on? And I was like, it's a black lab. He just doesn't stop.
He bites me from time to time.
Is he right there? Where is Romeo? Yeah. Oh, I want to see Romeo. We got to thank Lori Baker, who brought us together and introduced you to it, and made.
He's an old man now. He's like,
that's right.
He's still got some life.
Come on, Romeo.
Where's Romeo?
Come on, Romeo. Oh, is he grown?
Look at.
Oh my gosh!
So to show you how much he means to me, I remember.
Oh, great chin. I love
when my wife and I started dating. He was already 6 months old, and I'd go and, before go to bed, I'd go and I'd go to Romeo like, I love you, buddy. I'd get in bed and I'd look over her and I'm like, good night.
Glenn gets the same.
Yeah.
Glenn understands.
Oh, man. What is it about being second in line?
He has been such a blessing to our family, and I can't thank you guys enough. And I'm just forever indebted to the both of you, to Lori.
Oh,
But he's my guy. I mean, I can't tell you, I've had so many moments, right, buddy? I mean, he's
Your
been around.
buddy.
He's been around the freaking country with
I
me.
just love that dog.
Oh, and he's just happy to be there with me. But you know, I have this life that I have today, guys. I know we're gonna wrap soon, but I have this life that I have because I was willing to do the work, and I was willing to let go of a lot of things, whether it was the scars or the person or the ideas that I had prior to my life, you know, being turned upside down. And in some cases, letting go of some people and understanding that you got to put boundaries up on certain people because they're not helping propel you to the next phase of your
The
life.
basement people.
And
You got to get the balcony people in your
all
life.
of us are there.
Mhm.
All of us are there.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge to every single one of you. Reach out, stay connected. This is not the time to abandon it and to stay isolated. This is the time to do work for yourself personally, and then do that work professionally. Because when we get back to our norm, whatever that norm it looks
Yeah.
like, you want to be ready and you want to be a different person. You want to come out of this, because the one thing all of us complain about, including myself, we never have enough time. Well, now we have it. What are we going to do with it? So,
Oh, you know what, JR? We are so touched by your time that you took with us, and the people can find out more about your story by getting your book. Is that available?
it's on my website, so you can go to jrmartinez.com. That's where you can also find information related to just follow me on social media, or obviously you guys have it up as well. Thank you. But I got to have you guys on my podcast now. It's
We'll
called
be there. What's it called?
It's called Rebirth. And
Rebirth.
the
Love
whole
it.
idea is that a lot of veterans refer to the day that they were injured as their alive day. I call it my rebirth because I believe a new me was reborn on that day. And I believe that all of us, as you know, both of you have said throughout this interview, all of us are experiencing rebirths throughout the course of our life. But it depends on the choices and the decisions that we make. And you guys are prime examples of that.
Oh,
Wonderful.
JR, it has
Thank
been
you.
such an absolute pleasure to have you
Absolute.
with us
You
on Grit
guys.
Happens. Thank you
Hey.
so much
Thank you.
for your time. So, and don't forget, you can follow us on Grit Happens and
That's right.
Apple Podcast, Spotify. You
Facebook,
can watch. You can
YouTube,
watch it every Wednesday. We have
Instagram.
new episodes on Instagram on your face. Glenn Stearns at 2 p.m. every Wednesday, and episode 6 is where Charlie Plum appeared, who you referenced many times today. So thank you for that.
That's right.
And we're really excited to be part of this. Let us know. We'll be there.
We'll be there.
JR,
Hey, thank you,
thank
JR.
you for your sacrifice, your service, your time, your friendship, and your inspiration.
Thank you guys
We're
so
honored
much.
to know you.
Good luck, guys. We'll
Good
talk
luck
soon.
with you too.
All right. That
Take
has
care.
been another episode of Grit Happens. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time
We'll
on,
see ya.
what's the name?
Grit
Happens.
Happens.
Woo! Thank you, JR.
Thank you.